The welterweight division is the best division in the UFC. I've thought this for the last year, but as of the last couple weeks, it's truly undeniable. We've seen nearly the entire top 10 fight in the last 10 days, and while we've seen unreal performances, highlight knockouts, it has left us in a very strange place. Because I thought after this whole welterweight bracket that was taking place in the last couple weeks, everything was just going to sort itself out, right? But that isn't really what's happened at all. We don't have a true, undeniable number one contender who's clearly next for the belt. We have like 4 guys who are all claiming that they're next for the title, and honestly, I'm having a very hard time predicting what's next and what the UFC is going to do. So I'm going to break down the current state of the welterweight division. I'm going to go through each top contender and give their argument for why they should be next for Islam Makhachev. And then at the end, I'll say what I think the UFC should do and what I think they're going to do. Let's start with the guy who just fought most recently, Ian Machado Garry. And again, this isn't really my opinion right now. I'm just making the claim for each one. So if I'm Ian Garry, it's not a discussion. I have to be next. I just beat the number one guy, the former champion, and I did it in impressive fashion. I've stepped up time and time again, saved the UFC, and fought guys that nobody else wanted to fight on short notice. Last year on 3 weeks notice, I fought Shavkat Rakhmonov, the boogeyman of the division, the guy nobody wanted to fight. I was the first guy to not get finished by Shavkat. I was the first guy to take Shavkat down, and I almost got him out of there in the 5th round. I turn around this year and save the UFC again. I fight Carlos Prates, another guy that nobody wanted to fight on 3 weeks notice, and I beat him. He has his moments in the 4th or 5th round, but a clear Ian Garry decision. And then last weekend, I take on the number one guy, the former champion, and I beat him. He didn't have anything for me. He couldn't take me down. I did what I said I was going to do, and I have to be next. In terms of the matchup with Makhachev, I've shown my takedown defense, my wrestling ability. I keep saying I'm kind of a method actor, right? I probably got to develop the accent a little bit. He's also really running with this, Conor McGregor's protege versus Khabib Nurmagomedov's protege, which, I mean, one of those things is true. So that's the case for Ian Garry. Where does the biggest asterisk come up? The aforementioned Shavkat Rakhmonov, who beat Garry less than a year ago. So if I'm Shavkat Rakhmonov, you can't give Ian Garry a title shot over me. I just beat him under a year ago. And people forget, that was supposed to be for the belt. That was Belal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov for the welterweight strap. Belal pulls out a couple weeks before the fight. Ian Garry steps up, and I remember thinking it should have been for an interim belt. I don't remember why exactly it wasn't, but that's usually what they do, right? That close to the fight, the champion pulls out, you still put an interim belt on the line. So if I'm Shavkat, I didn't have to take that fight. I was preparing to fight Belal for the undisputed world title, and 3 weeks before the fight, I get a different opponent with no belt on the line. I still showed up and I won the fight. So I should have been the interim champ. So then I'm finally getting a crack at the undisputed championship back in May. He gets hurt and has to pull out of the fight, but it wasn't like Arman versus Islam where it happens 10 minutes before the fight. I don't even think Belal versus Shavkat was officially announced for the May card. But so yeah, he had to pull out, but he already did the UFC a huge favor by staying on the card in December and fighting for essentially nothing. So that's his claim. He's been the number one guy in this division. He's been next for a title shot forever. He's been the boogeyman in this division forever. So you can say that he lost his spot, but then you're giving the shot to someone who he just beat. And you want to talk about stylistic matchups, Jiminy Christmas. Can you imagine Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Islam Makhachev? Is there a better fight to make in the UFC? Can you imagine the clinch sequences? I wake up in a cold sweat about once a week thinking about Shavkat and Islam in the clinch. These are some big, strong boys who are going to throw down. And obviously, I don't quite think Shavkat is the level of striker that JDM is, although you could probably argue that he has better kicks and maybe is similar in power. But when it comes to the grappling, right, it is not even close. So how did the grappling sequences go with Islam versus Shavkat? How did the striking exchanges go when Islam doesn't have that clear takedown in his back pocket that he can just go to whenever he wants? That would be a sick fight. Shavkat's still undefeated. And again, I think the Garry fight might be harder to sell because Shavkat just beat him. Who's next? A guy that if I'm Islam Makhachev, I'm praying on my lucky stars he doesn't get the call. The 26-year-old phenom, Michael Morales, the Marauder, Spider-Man. I mean, holy smokes, is this guy good. I've been talking to anyone who would listen about this guy for the last year, so you can like, comment, subscribe if you want your friends to think you're a ball knower like myself. Here's the claim if you're Michael Morales. Dana White said that me versus Brady was for the number one contender, that the winner was next for the title shot. That's it. End of discussion. Dana sometimes backs himself into a corner when he gives these kind of ambiguous answers. And I should have said this earlier, maybe I'll put it in earlier, but Sean Brady was the only one out of these guys that was definitely next with a win. He just dog walked Leon Edwards in his backyard, did something that no one's ever done to him. And then he was the number one guy. Obviously, Belal ended up getting bumped and taking that spot. But if Brady beat Morales, he was next. End of discussion. And in the build-up to this fight, when they're asking Dana, is Brady versus Morales for the number one contender? Is the winner going to fight for the belt? He's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds good. I don't know. Because I do think that was the case for Sean Brady. But if you're Michael Morales, you're like, he said it. what else needs to be discussed? The guy's got back-to-back-to-back first-round knockouts. He's just 26 years of age, and we see a new and improved version of him every time he steps foot in the octagon. And that guy who I was just talking about, Sean Brady, who was going to be next, he just steamrolled him. Like, complete mismatch. Everything he threw hurt Brady, knocked him out in a couple minutes. So Morales is 19-0. He's 7-0 in the UFC, the same record as Shavkat. And he just could not have made it look easier against the number 1 or 2 guy, like the most impressive fashion possible. And with the rate he's improving at, who knows what version of him is going to step in the octagon next? Like, who knows what he's going to be? So that's a very legitimate claim as well. And you want to talk about stylistic matchups? I mean, this might be the hardest matchup for Islam. The guy's listed at 6'1", 170. He looks like he's 6'4", 225 pounds, playing defensive end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is an absolute monster with legitimate one-punch knockout power. And with his very rare combination of speed, size, and athleticism, he is a problem for anyone in the welterweight division. And there's one more silky smooth rhyming cat that we need to talk about, although I don't really want to. My brother, Kamaru Usman, Marty Fake Newsman. So we've heard him say it a ton these last couple weeks, but here's his argument. I'm a top 8 to 10 fighter in the history of the sport. I am at worst the second best fighter in this division's history. I was a dominant champion for years. I was the number 1 pound for pound fighter for years. And I was one of the most active fighters in UFC history, turning around every 4 months and putting on incredible performances. I lost in the worst way possible. If I just did that, who knows where I would be today? And then he loses again to Leon. And then what happens? He saves the UFC on about 10 minutes notice. He flies across the planet, moves up a weight class, and fights the scariest guy in the UFC. And it was a very close fight. A lot of people think he won the second and third rounds of that fight, and it was a draw. And even if you don't think that, it's hard not to think, hey, what if this fight was 5 rounds? Usman has all the momentum in this third round. Or how would Usman look with a full training camp? How would he look if he properly bulked up to 185? He then takes like nearly 2 years off. He gets healthy. We know about those knees. But he said he's still hungry. He still wants to fight the best, and he proves that. He fights surging contender Joaquin Buckley, who was on like a 6 or 7 fight win streak. So if you're Usman, you're back in the win column. You're one of the greatest of all time, and you've done the UFC plenty of favors over the years. These are all Johnny-come-latelys that are claiming that they should be next. This is former pound-for-pound king versus current pound-for-pound king. We all used to fantasize about Khabib versus Usman, and now we get the next best thing. Kamaru Usman should be next for the belt. Whoosh! That line did not feel good to say. I do not believe that at all. So those are the 4 guys. Those are their claims. What do I think should happen, and what do I think the UFC is going to do? I don't really know. I've changed my mind so many times on this in these last couple weeks, and I assume I'm just going to continue to do that. I went into UFC 322 saying if Sean Brady beats Morales, he's next, no questions asked. And then I went into this past weekend saying if Garry can finish Bilal in extremely impressive fashion, then he should be next. And obviously neither of those things happened. But now I'm left more confused than ever. I think all 4 of these guys have a legit claim. Well, 3 of them. I don't think Usman really should be in this conversation at all. And speaking of changing my mind, these last couple months, I've been saying that Shavkat, like, no way he could get a title shot. No way he could take this much time and just come right back in and get a title shot. This game moves too fast. So much has happened in this division. And these last couple weeks, with everyone else in the top 10 fighting, like, I wanted him versus Sean Brady so badly. Or even him versus Bilal finally. Like, that would have been a great fight. But I thought he needed one more to solidify himself as the number 1 guy. And I still think that's a very fair take. Like, by the time the next welterweight title fight would be, if it is him, like, he'll have not fought in well over a year. And if Garry could just put out Bilal, if he sparked him out, then I would come on here and say that he's definitely next. But right now, I have a hard time putting Garry over Shavkat when the 2 literally just fought. And on paper, I mean, Michael Morales probably has the best argument, let's be honest. And I don't think Islam's scared of anyone. We've heard some pretty crazy takes, like, this is the baddest man on the planet. But I do think that's probably the most difficult matchup for him. So if I'm Islam, if I have any say in it, I'd be like, yeah, he's 4th out of these 4 guys. So I guess having said all this, I think Shavkat is probably the most deserving guy right now. But who gives a bullocks what I think? If I'm making my prediction right now, who's next for Islam Makhachev? Who gets the next welterweight title shot? I got a bad feeling it's going to be Kamaru Usman. Again, I really don't think it should be him, but I think these other guys have left the door slightly open, and Islam has definitely earned some say in who he fights at this point in his career with all he's accomplished. So we know how badly Usman wants to fight. If Islam really pushes for this fight, like, it could happen. So it would kind of be Stipe versus John all over the place, except Stipe hadn't fought in 3.5 years, and his last fight was him getting brutally finished. But then also heavyweight didn't have like 4 other extremely young, exciting, legitimate title contenders. So I really don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know, the matchups that are going to happen at the top of welterweight are outrageous, dude. I can't remember being this excited about a division in a very long time. Like, obviously, lightweight has been red hot forever. Bantamweight has always been extremely exciting with a bunch of legit contenders. But Islam Makhachev is the best fighter in the UFC. Behind him, you got Shavkat Rakhmonov, you got Garry, you still got JDM, you got Michael Morales, you got Carlos Prates, and you got Kamaru Usman. And you still got Sean Brady not far behind them. You got Buckley. Dude, this division is unreal. But I really want to hear from you guys. What do you want next in the welterweight division? Who should be fighting for the belt? And what are the other matchups that you want to see? Thank you.